Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Hello, welcome to this week's Real Estate Investing for Professional Men and Women podcast for you and me. We're business owners, we're professionals, and it's how we invest that makes the difference. Everybody wants to invest, and everybody hears all the late night guru, no money down under financing, which is all great. It has its place. I've done a lot of it, but it's not every place. What we recognize is when we think about investing the way we think about our business, it's a different mindset. We tend to have greater success. So that's really what this is all about. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the podcast. So it's on a number of different channels, obviously, being downloaded now in over 50 countries. And also, if you want to be a member, just remember, go to realestatewithgarywilson.com, realestatewithgarywilson.com. Click on members area. You'll see two logins. One's for if you're already a member, you know what to do. That's on the left. The other one's if you don't yet, because you haven't done it already, click in, log in, because you're going to get 30 days for free anyways. Might as well take advantage of it. And here's the beautiful thing about right now, because of all that's happening in the world, they've cut the monthly fee from $100 a month to $49 something per month. And you get all the goodies, the community site, the weekly webinars, access to all the agents you train to work with you and I, reports on cash buyers and private lenders, and dozens of websites on research. So you might as well take advantage of it while the getting's good. Anyway, let's go into today's subject. We got a great guest, Chris Arnold. He's got a great business running in Texas, but he also is living the life of dreams down in Tulum, Mexico. So Chris, welcome aboard, man.
Hey, Gary, what's up, man? Glad to hang out with you, add some value today.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I appreciate you taking your valuable time to share your expertise with everybody. So let's do this. I just probably whet everybody's appetite. I just told them that your business is in Texas and yet you're living in Tulum, Mexico. So they're going to want to know about that. If you wouldn't mind.
Usually that piques people's interest, right?
That's Absolutely. It, man. I tell you, give them paint a picture and give us some good juicy details. Maybe how did you start? How did you get there? And then we'll go into maybe some examples or case studies to show people how they can participate and do what you're doing, living a life of dreams,
Yeah, so I got my feet wet actually on the agency side. So I knew I wanted to use real estate as a vehicle. There was no question, but there's a lot of ways to get off the bench and into the game. And so for me at the time, I simply started by going and getting a real estate license, right? That's how I started, and went to be an agent and did kind of the Century 21 to Keller Williams, kind of that whole roadmap. But the thing I learned along the way was the ability to build a team, right? And so I built a large real estate team doing retail and ended up going out on my own and starting a brokerage. And once I had that piece down, I had my eye on the investment side. And so we started doing fix and flip. We do wholesale. We do some vacation rentals down here in Mexico. And that really was kind of what we've been doing the last 8 years, and married kind of the brokerage retail side together along with the investment side as well. And during that period of time, I'm driven by freedom. That's a big, big driver for me. I think a lot of us listening are. But I think one of the ultimate freedoms is location, not to have to live in the city where you do business. And so probably about 5-6 years ago, we really started working on building a virtual company. And so, a few years ago, we got rid of all brick and mortar. We started traditionally with the office, left that behind, and that eventually freed me up to be able to move down to the Caribbean and live in Tulum full time and still operate and do businesses out of Dallas, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I admire you for doing that, man. I did sort of the same thing, but I just decided I just want to travel everywhere. So for the last 5 years, I've been literally nonstop staying at resort areas all over. I'd spend the even number of years, the winters in Florida, and the odd number of years I would spend in California in the winter. And in the summer months, I'd go up north and go across, the northern states and Canada and all that. But the thing is, I've been where you are probably like 8 times, and I love the culture down there. Xcaret and Xel-Há and all those awesome places you can go.
I love that you know the names of those. That's great.
Yeah. And I got to learn how to speak Spanglish when I was down there. But beautiful water, weather, people, food, the whole 9 yards. So let's do this. Let's go back to the beginning. when you first started breaking into investing, a lot of people listening, they're in the beginning stages. They either have their own business, they have a practice, and they realize, my gosh, I don't want to be stuck behind a chair. Dentists say this a lot. I don't want to be stuck behind the chair when I'm 60 years old. What can I do? Well, I think you should be partly in real estate, at least partly in real estate, and they can leverage their practices. They can lend money from the practice to another company that buys real estate and vice versa. All kinds of new things they can do. Yeah, but and you've probably got some good examples and case studies here too. But back to the beginning, like, what was the inspiration? What was your first project? What really made you realize, my gosh, I can actually do this and live the life of your dreams,
Yeah, so I understood the retail side of real estate, which honestly is really different than the investment side. Those are two different worlds. And at the time, one of my best friends really kind of understood construction. He knew nothing about real estate, but his dad was a big construction guy out in Vegas. And so I remember literally just having a pizza at Sal's Pizza in Cedar Hill, Texas. And it was like, hey, construction. I know kind of real estate side. I have access to the multiple listing service. Why don't we do a deal together? You never know where one of those conversations are going to lead to. And so I remember just kind of, turning on my reticular activator and saying, if a deal comes down the pipeline, maybe we should do it. And it was probably maybe about 3 weeks later or so, this property came down the pipeline via my brokerage. I'll never forget the name of the street. It was called Calmia. And first deal, everybody loves that story, kind of how we get into our first deal. We actually took this guy out to a Mexican restaurant, which is not an efficient way to do transactions. But hey, it was our first deal, right? And I remember negotiating over some chips and salsa and fajitas. And the funniest part of that story is every time we got to a sticking point and my partner and I needed to make a decision about price or terms, we would have to excuse ourselves, run to the bathroom, have our secret conversation in there, and then come back and sit down at the table. And this probably happened 3 or 4 times. But it was definitely a ready, fire, aim approach. We didn't really know what we were doing. We just said, let's get in the game. And I remember there was a guy kind of walking us through the process, a buddy that I would call here and there. And I remember him asking me questions like, well, Chris, did you get your insurance for the fix and flip? I was like, oh, I need insurance. I didn't know that. Where did I go to do that? And we kind of fumbled our way through that first deal. But I remember we made somewhere around $20,000 on that first flip. Okay. It was a moderate flip. So it wasn't heavy. It wasn't light. It was kind of right in the middle. And it was an eye opener, right? To get that check from the title company for $20,000. And then you go, you know what? Let's rinse, repeat. Let's do this again. And that's how we definitely started to snowball the process.
So it started with flipping. Now, did you end up branching off in the other strategies for investing? I mean, there's all kinds of, there's the BRRRR method, buy, remodel, rent for finance. There's wholesaling. There's all partnerships, all kinds of ways you can get in. But what would you say is the next thing what did flipping lead you to? I guess is what I'm trying to say. And what other venues did you
the thing that came right after that was wholesaling. And that came because we realized how scalable it was to flip a contract. So if you're new to real estate and you're like, well, what is wholesaling? It's simply the art of finding properties at a discount and then taking that contract and giving it to a fix and flip person or someone building a rental portfolio and getting a fee. And so it becomes really easy in comparison to fix and flip. And so it kind of came to this whole philosophy, did we want a fast nickel or a slow dime? And at that point, we were rehabbing a lot of properties. We were getting up to about 45 to 50 a year, which is a lot of construction to manage. And honestly, it was tough at that level. And we looked at wholesaling as kind of a more streamlined approach. And so if you're asking me where we're at now, we do a combination of both. But we definitely do more on the wholesale side than the fix and flip side, just because I believe it's a more scalable business. And I think you'd be surprised at the profits on wholesaling. It's a lot bigger than what I thought they were.
Yeah. Yeah, there's my very first wholesale deal. I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't even know it was called wholesaling. And I made a whopping $2,500 because I didn't know what to ask for. I mean, literally, just to paint the picture, I'd already got under contract with 2 other properties that day. And I was out looking at another property. I'm like, man, this thing's a winner too. What do I do? And lo and behold, my coach called and he said, hey, Gary, you wouldn't have to have a property. You could give this to somebody. So I have a client who's a dentist and he wants to invest in a worse way. He's busy, but he didn't know where to start, where to look, and doesn't have a lot of time. I said, well, ironically, Jim, I'm actually standing in one right now. And I said, how does that work? I mean, you can have it. I don't want to earn a commission or anything, but he said, no, you're going to earn what's called a wholesale fee. How much do you want? And I said, I don't know I don't even know what that is, but what the heck? How's $2,500? And he said, done. 10 minutes later, the dentist called. He said, I understand you got a property. I'll send you the check for the $2,500. Just tell me what to do. So I got him. I gave him the property. It wasn't even like a legit wholesale deal, but that was my first foray. And I've been on the buying side too, so it absolutely does work. I'm living proof that it works. And I've seen people build huge businesses around wholesaling, even realtors. Like I've taught realtors how to work with investors who are wholesaling so they can find the inventory, even find the client. A wholesaler still wholesales, but doesn't have to do the work, and they love it. And the realtor gets listing side by side commission, and the wholesaler still gets to wholesale the deal. And a realtor even charges a wholesaler like a transaction fee or something. I've seen people get paid as many as 5 times on one wholesale deal, you know? So, but in any case, I appreciate you bringing it up now. So let's talk about this. So you're doing this remotely. So if somebody's interested in wholesaling something in the DFW area or flipping a home, and they want to work with you, they want to take advantage of what you're doing there, what does that look like? Just take a teacher, for example, who's now no longer teaching because I'm going to date timestamp this. Because of the COVID-19 stay-at-home requirements, teachers sitting there getting paid, not having to work, and they want to get involved. What should they do? I mean, how do they get a hold of you? Like, what's the steps they would follow, I guess, if they're new to this, you know?
Yeah, so I want to answer the question, like, you're a professional, right? You have some type of profession that's allowing you to stack a good amount of cash. You want to get into the game. And I love this podcast because this is a really interesting topic. It doesn't come up on a lot of the other podcasts I do. If I look at those individuals, I think layer number one, you can choose to be a passive lender, right? A private lender. I have a lot of lenders I work with. They can be doctors, attorneys, even guys that run businesses that are stacking cash and go, you know what? I looked into the real estate thing and I don't necessarily want to do that myself. So I've got a couple options. Either I can lend my money with a trusted real estate investor and get a interest back on that, right? A guaranteed amount. Or number two, I'd be interested in JVing with somebody and allowing them to do the work. So I'm going to work with the fix and flip person, for example. I'm going to bring the cash. They're going to do the sweat work, and we're going to split profits 50-50, and that allows me not to get too pulled into the real estate game. So that's kind of one camp at which I see professionals get into the real estate game but decide that they don't want to get their hands too dirty with it.
Yeah.
And they love that because that can be a really passive approach if you can connect with a couple real estate investors that you trust, particularly that are doing volume. The second are the people that actually want to get into the game themselves. And my recommendation is if you're going to be doing the deal, I would definitely encourage people to consider wholesaling before fix and flip, just because from a time standpoint, it's a lot less work to do. And you might want to get to a point of doing fix and flip, but if you're doing transactional deals, we're not talking about long-term buy and hold, but I'm doing transactions to make a profit back quickly, right? Yeah. I want a quick pay on that. I would definitely look at starting on the wholesale route just because it's less work to do. I mean, it's nowadays where you're like, you can actually do nothing but do some marketing, find a deal, wrap it up, and then give it to another wholesaler and let them do the whole back-end process. So you don't even have to remarket it and find a cash buyer for that deal, right? You can actually just JV with someone else. And we have those relationships of, the professional that goes, I like to do a little marketing. I like to convert a deal here and there, but I want to be out after that. So that's how I look at that as a sense of like initial steps.
Okay. Well, cool. I appreciate that. Now, as far as geography, obviously you've proven you can do this or run this and manage this from afar. But for somebody who's like up in the middle of nowhere, I mean, I shouldn't say it that way, but like Montana, I've been to Montana and driven across it, and they said it would take a day to drive across Montana. I think it took like 3 years. But they're up there, and maybe where they, beautiful country, by the way. Up, you can go to Yellowstone from up north or up there. But let's say they want to invest. Can they do this in Texas, or can you help somebody from Canada who wants to invest in Texas?
Of course. It's called virtual wholesaling.
Okay.
And it's the idea that you can do deals in a market in which you don't live in, which is great. So you might, let's take your example of Montana. You might be in a small market and go, you know what, there's just not real good activity here for me. You can go to any place in the United States that you want to, and there's definitely a lot of coaching and a lot of help out there on that concept of doing virtual wholesaling. And not just doing it in one market, you also have the ability, let's say you're listening and go, I'm a savvy business person, I'm a dentist. I've scaled and done multiple offices. Like, I like this idea of scaling and going into different territories and so forth. With virtual wholesaling, you can be doing deals in multiple cities at the same time. And so there are definitely people that are going that route to have 8, 10, 15 different cities in which they're doing deals in. So you can, again, that's what I love about real estate. We have so many options. For us, just because it's preference, we focus on Dallas-Fort Worth, and the way that we grow is we grow our radius. So we just do more and more of Texas, right? We go further and further out. Yeah. Or you have the opportunity of just going into completely different territory. So grow your radius or just jump to somewhere entirely new. But you definitely have both of those options at your disposal.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, just to name some of those areas, I mean, when you go outside the greater metroplexes, Houston, Dallas, and all that, go west of Dallas, you've got, Abilene, Midland's way out there. Amarillo's way up northwest, up in the Panhandle. Down around, you got down around Austin and San Antonio, Fredericksburg, Temple. All these, they're smaller towns, but it's like operating in a vacuum. There's not a lot of people that are doing this, and there's tons of opportunities, just amazing. So let's I want to do another example. Let's talk about like a real estate agent, because the reason I'm asking is I've taught in classrooms about somewhere between 20, 24,000 real estate agents how to work with investors. And I've personally coached about 3,000 of them one-on-one. But what can you tell them? How can a realtor attract these people? Is there a medium of, whether it's Facebook, radio, whatever? And also, what should they know? How can they think? What mindset do they need to be able to attract the realtors and have a long-term relationship? Because I've done it myself, but it was just basically Gary Wilson coming up from the grassroots effort, So so I know you at one point you have a brokerage, and I think it's virtual now too. But what can you tell those realtors out there right now wondering what do they do, because they're being told they can't do open houses, they can't do closings, which I think is crazy, but that's what they're being told,
Yeah, so if you're asking philosophically, I would tell honestly any agent to really break outside and not be locked into doing deals and just getting a commission, right? I was there. I've done that. I think that agency is great. I think that building a team, building a brokerage is a good thing to do, but it's also having a lot of eggs in one basket. And you realize that with what's happened recently in our environment, right? Yeah. I know that the retail side, depending on your geographical area, is getting hit a bit more. And so if someone on the agent side was like, what should I get my hand involved in and so forth, man, I highly recommend starting to develop an investment arm to what you're doing. And again, as an agent, you get access to deals, right? We call them pocket listings, off-market properties in which somebody as a seller is going to reach out to you and you're going to be the first to the door. But what surprises me, Gary, is how many agents don't know what to do with these leads. They throw them in the trash because it's like, well, that's an ugly house that I'm unwilling to put my sign in front of, and the seller doesn't have any type of ability to rehab this house or better it themselves. I know that. I used to be there. And my challenge to you that's listening on that side is definitely begin to open yourself up to sharpening an investment tool. So maybe you, as an example, practically build a relationship with someone that wholesales. Yeah. And you send them those deals and then you take a split off of that. We work with agents all the time doing 50-50 splits on deals. And I'm amazed they make more on our 50-50 splits on wholesaling than they do predominantly on the commissions they get regularly. It's crazy. You know, we can do a deal and make 20, 30, 40,000 and split that. And think about that. They got paid more money and all they did was send over an opportunity to us as an investment company that knew exactly what to do with that. I mean, that's as easy as I know how to kind of get your foot into the game that requires very little work. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that. So I was about 5 years ago really blessed to be able to spend a day with Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that whole company there, and had dinner with him and everything. And we talked about this very subject. And he said, Gary, I've brought realtors into deals where I've given them as much as 20%. They called it a commission, but to me, it's like, they did a good job finding me something that I was able to make a lot of money on. I wanted to cut them in so they would do more. And I thought that's interesting because I've been investing for over 34 years and a broker for 18 of those, but only for the purpose of serving investors. And I never thought about, early on, being part of the transaction and making 20% or 50% versus only 3 or 6%. It's an amazing value proposition. And all you got to do is study the business and learn what it is to invest, just like you study how to fix engines or fix people's teeth. I mean, you got to learn, and the learning's out there. The success leaves clues, So I appreciate you explaining that. Now, as far as timing goes, obviously, again, people are going to listen to this thinking, okay, well, that was during the COVID-19 shutdown. And I get that, but some of these things are timeless. So if you noticed in the years you've been operating, like 10 years ago, clearly we're at the bottom of that recession. And then we came back and just the market was like amazing up until this early this year. And now we're back down again. But as far as timing, are the things you would do today that you might not have done last year and vice versa as far as strategy, like how you approach a deal or how you partner? I mean, like what would you say to somebody who has that question that's not me, I mean, somebody that's new to investing and are worried about, because I get this a lot, they'll say, well, I'll wait and see. And I hate to hear that because what that means is they're going to lose. They're going to lose the opportunities,
Yeah. So if you're asking me like what I would do to prepare, and there's no question that there's always opportunity on the other side. Yeah. We know that. But to be prepared for that opportunity doesn't mean that you have the luxury of shutting everything down and waiting for that opportunity to occur, because those of us that kept the game going were pivoting and shifting faster to be prepared for the opportunity as it comes down the pipeline. But, a couple things that I think are really important. Everything is now being built on a virtual model. And so what I mean by that is we are doing real estate transactions while maintaining social distancing, never once interacting directly with a seller, never once interacting directly with an investor that's buying our properties, and not even interacting with the title company. So I think foundationally, if you're not building out your systems from a standpoint of being able to do things virtually, you're going to get left behind. And there's no question that business has been moving to more of a virtual platform, but that whole process just got sped up tremendously. So Those of us that were early adopters have been on that train. Those in the middle and late adopters right now have no choice but to catch up. And so that's probably one key shift I would tell you. The second thing that I would say as well is, you've got to be continuing to market right now. Whatever it is you do to find deals, we won't get into why people do what they do or what works, but as an example is direct mail or outbound cold calling or ringless voicemail, or like for us, we utilize radio, right, which I think is the best medium to be able to find discounted properties. But marketing strategies have to be in place so that when the tide turns, those sellers, those people that might have been sitting on the sidelines, were hearing your message while everyone else was being quiet, and there's pent up desire that's happening. It's a dam that's going to break. And all of a sudden, all those people that needed to make a move, all those type of things are ready to do it. And you want to be positioned from a marketing standpoint to be at the top of their mind when they make that decision. Like, oh, I remember that company I kept hearing on the radio that told us they were still doing business when everything was going on and they were doing things virtually. And now I'm ready to do something. That's the company that I'm going to call.
Yeah.
So those are two things I would really be focusing on right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Marketing is one of those things. It's a momentum business, which means you got to get it started and keep it going. Because if you don't, if you start and stop and start and stop, every time you restart, you got to start all over again. It's called front of mind presence. So you mentioned radio. I think that's pretty intriguing. I know we're getting kind of close on time here, but I'd love it if you could touch on radio for a second. Just talk about how you actually use radio, maybe an example or a case study to help your business, if you don't mind doing that.
Yeah, radio is the marketing channel that everyone knows about, but nobody's using. And so people really don't understand until they begin to ask themselves this question: who do I know that's utilizing radio to find discounted, distressed properties for me to pick up? I don't care if you're doing buy and hold, fix and flip, wholesale. It doesn't matter what your strategy is. We're all looking for motivated sellers. And so we started radio like 9 years ago. And without question, it has been the best lead generation source that we've ever set up. A few reasons why: it creates celebrity status, which is huge. You want that in your market, particularly when you go up against competition. I would always rather walk in the door as the local celebrity via radio or TV than someone that is not. You get instant credibility. People trust that you know what you're talking about because you're advertising on the radio. It's 100% inbound calls. So literally all you got to do is answer the phone. It's set it and forget it. It requires very little maintenance. You turn your ads on and the radio station pretty much manages everything for you. So I think that that's another crucial thing. And probably the last thing I would say is it's the thing that we've been able to depend upon the most. It's just consistent amount of motivated calls coming in. And honestly, it's probably the highest quality lead that we've been able to ever generate. Because think about it, if someone calls you while driving down the road, listening to radio, they're pretty motivated. It's not like a response to direct mail where we know that half of those people are calling to tell you to stop mailing their house and that they hate you, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. So radio, so you're placing ads as opposed to like having a radio show. So
yeah, we're doing a call to action. So a 60-second spot, call to action. The ad is fundamentally naming every type of pain point that a seller might be embracing: foreclosure, inherited a property, a landlord tired of dealing with tenants, all of those type of things, saying, hey, if you fall into one of these camps, we're the people that'll come in, buy that property quickly for cash as is, and make this process super simple for you. And that type of ad makes the phone ring.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, and I know different markets might have different pricing structures. In other words, I'm outside of Toronto right now, huge world-class market, compared to say like Dayton, Ohio, very small market. With that aside, where you are, if you don't mind sharing, what would somebody spend in an average week on radio ads, and how many would you get per day? And I guess it would be at peak times, like morning, noon, rush hour traffic, that type of thing.
Yeah, you can start in any market. Okay, let's use Dallas-Fort Worth, which is literally one of the most expensive markets and competitive for real estate investing in the country. I don't care where you're at. You can start with a budget of somewhere between $1,000 to $2,000 a month. Most people don't realize it. They automatically assume that it's not affordable and that I have to begin with like 10 grand a month. That is not true. The very first station I got in Dallas was $1,500, and that gave me 100 spots per month. So yes, if you're doing the math on that, I'm running 60-second spots at $15. So we actually show people how to advertise on radio and to be able to get deeply discounted radio ads. So think of it this way: we buy our radio ads like we buy our real estate, at rock bottom prices. And so that's definitely what has helped us be successful on it.
Well, I tell you what, I think that's probably one of the most intriguing things we talked about, because a lot of people, investors, don't think of that, and realtors don't think of it either. So if you don't mind, it sounds like you can help people do that. I want to make sure people know how to get a hold of you. Is there a free report, a book, a podcast you got? How can people, website, how can we get a hold of you and learn more about what it is you do to help us, particularly when it comes to like radio and getting business that way,
Yeah. So I do a ton of podcasts, different stuff like that. But the best place to go, and I just launched it to funnel everything through it, is my YouTube channel. And so you can just go to YouTube and Google Chris Arnold Real Estate, and that'll just give you free information on, it's everything, to how I'm doing everything virtually, to running one of the top masterminds in the country, which is Multipliers Brotherhood, to wholesaling, fix and flip, you name it. We tackle just about everything, and a lot of just business stuff, right? Because I don't care what industry you're in, business is business. So we have a lot of overlapping principles. And if you're curious about radio, you're like, you know what? I would love to consider setting up radio for my market. Again, we limit the amount of people per market just so it doesn't get oversaturated. But the best place there is just to start with questions and to book a call and just to see if it's a good fit for you. But you can go to wholesalinginc.com/REI Radio. Again, that's wholesalinginc.com/REI Radio, and book a call to learn more about radio. And we definitely just give everyone a full blueprint that qualifies to come in on how to set that up in their market.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. I tell you what, I think, Chris, I speak for a lot of people when I say thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing your time, and most especially your.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.